In middle way approach lies a hope to find a resolution to a political stalemate. But it is in itself becoming a stalemate, especially in the last 10 years. In more than one public speeches that I listened to of the incumbent Sikyong Dr. Lobsa Sangila, he said, resolving the Sino-Tibetan relationship is proving to be much harder as we are dependent on the other side, meaning China. It is true to an extent, but I would like to remind everyone that we once had the key with us when in the late 1970s, Chinese leadership said they were willing to discuss anything apart from independence. So we must think about when and why China said what they said. According to me, it was said when China as a nation was undergoing political changes and were reviewing the policies. They also said it because we have organizations like Tibetan Youth Congress that was founded at the beginning of the same decade, spearheading mass protest rally on huge scale when there were hardly anyone migrating to Western countries, and multiple other factors we possess that reflected a strong sense of unity. But our political strategies in response were middle way approach, independence, truth-seeking, and self-determination, as thought through by the experts, keeping in mind the best interests of the nation. But thereafter, we began to lose our unity a little. Honestly speaking, we had our own share of internal conflicts going on, ranging from the disharmony between Utang and Ngari, between the new and old Dodo administration, the issue faced by His Holiness the 17th Karmapa, and with His Holiness the Panchen Rinpoche. We were immersed in unimportant bickering for about 10 to 15 years in internal disagreement, all of which are a thing of a past now. However, when we finally emerged out of it, China has transformed into a rising superpower. The key to a quick resolution for Tibet's issue is now in a drawer locked twice. I personally am quite certain that we can get that back and not be at the mercy of China's political situation or cooperation. We have to take deliberate actions to breed a more conducive situation for dialogue to take place and not stay idle and rely on hope. The answer is to work hard on instilling value in the current middle way approach. Right now, the common people seem to have a similar perception of middle way approach as towards any religious mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum. Everyone knows it is holy, and all the Buddhists across national identity chant it, not necessarily knowing the meaning of the mantra. But when it comes to describing and living the meaning of the mantra, we have only lamas and few learned men who could do that. Honestly, I personally cannot describe the meaning myself. According to me, the basic defect with middle way approach is it is currently claimed by all but not supported with sufficient actions. It is not well supported to be a strong force of strong conflict resolution. Just like we believe a student needs good teachers, school, family, and facilities to aspire for the best, middle way approach also needs the work of everyone involved and not just say, I believe in its supernatural power and that truth will take its course and come out victorious. Middle way approach has some of its sides dangling. As an approach, it is consistent with our Buddhist principle of non-violence, but it is only His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Tibetans in Tibet who are actively involved in peaceful actions to back it up. But what about people in exile and taking actions that would give rise to other missing factors that would compel China to cooperate? Our compatriots self-immolating in Tibet had China thinking that the Tibetan race is a race that is ready to sacrifice their lives despite everything. It is by now embedded in China's mental setup, if not declared officially. Ideally, China would think that the Tibetan outside the Tibet with more freedom would pose bigger threat. But my dear brothers and sisters in Tibet, I honor all your sacrifices. We in exile should be doing something equally impactful or bigger, but we have done nothing so far compared to you. So I request you all not to give up your lives, but choose to live long enough to see His Holiness the Dalai Lama in your lifetime. It is my hope and a heartfelt request. We also have people referring to middle way approach as the Guruji's approach and making it sound like individually we are not obliged to do anything and have someone else take care of it. Let me tell you, the middle way approach is not something imposed by His Holiness. At the same time, I must also say that the perception of people towards people advocating Rangzin or independence being anti-establishment is totally ridiculous and hypocritical. It is just another ground to create division. According to me, for a middle way approach to work, we should first work on equipping ourselves with the right set of tools to be a good advocate of it. We need to qualify first to be at a certain level as a specific group of people that others would respond to, and that means working on improving the distinctive feature of Tibetan as a race by pursuing quality education and financial stability first. If I may cite an example here, a certain downtrodden sections of Nepali who are Hindu by birth constantly converts to Christianity in hopes of better life, like certain other communities, for better educational facilities for their kids, who at times eventually become pastors, but that is deviating from your route. Generally speaking, if there are two person, one a humble educated man and other an authoritative and financially well-off person, the first wouldn't think much of surrendering its independence of thoughts for being financially dependent. On the other hand, a person with money is not always immune from someone with more formal education and authority changing their minds. That is the reason why an individual must have both quality education and stable financial ground, not to be swayed left or right. Such an educated and well-off Tibetan would be in a position to protect its identity and culture and can then fight for its political rights legally. We then become eligible advocate for middle way approach. Since financial stability would enable the parents and the guardians and stakeholders to invest more in the education of the children, working on procuring mass seasonal work visa to exiled Tibetan would be one of the ways to increase the income level and foster a more stable business occupation and quality education in Tibetan community. This is just one of the ways, and with the guidance of our government, I am sure there are many other ways. If we do that and come out a better equipped as a race, China will then take notice of the change and feel the need to respond to our nonviolent claim. Not only that, China would feel the need to talk while we have His Holiness in our midst, because it will be easier to come to an agreement with His Holiness there to mediate. It will be a much tougher task to come to any resolution with Tibetan people without His Holiness, who has almost total acceptance by Tibetan, Indian government, and any other government in the world. His Holiness did not advocate middle way approach because we cannot prove our independent status, but because of the facts like heavy influx of Chinese in Tibet and other facts that poses danger to existence of our culture and tradition. And if China thinks we cannot explain or that they can override the facts with their false claim, they are mistaken. His Holiness never denied our once independent status, and middle way approach is currently the majority accepted method. Secondly, our political leaders in the government and other related organizations, I notice, keep explaining about the middle way approach in a way that only talks about how it came about and its origin, and never about what one needs to do to make it work and what its action plans are. Repeating the history of the middle way approach does not help us find ways to make it work. So we have to equip ourselves as a race to have China listen to us, and if they don't, it'll cost them. For example, I, a 50-year-old man who has consumed lots of calories and subsequently burned a lot of calories, am able to sustain my life because of my health and diet. How long and well I live is dependent on healthy actions and quality of the diet. In the same way, middle way approach also needs healthy action plans and diets. While saying Rangzeba or people seeking independence for Tibet are not acceptable, middle way approach proponents must also ask themselves, what have I done? What concrete actions have I taken, instead of just talking about its origin? And these are my personal feelings, and I'm not trying to impose anything on anyone. If we do our part by working on improving the factors that distinguishes Tibetan from the rest of the world, China would definitely pay attention to what we say. And if they don't, it will cost them a lot. As we all know, the middle way approach is settling for something less in the face of impending threats to the existence of our unique identity. Let's say, for example, somebody owes me $100, but I'm not able to claim the full amount for some reason and am ready to settle for 50. If the other party does not cooperate and stall it further in hopes of it dropping more, the other party is just digging their own holes. Whereas if they agrees to take up the offer and pay the 50 and settle the matter, it would be the right thing to do while the offer is still on. Correlating that to our own experience, if tomorrow our future generation decides they do not want to settle for anything less when it's not working and decide to claim what is rightly due and more, it would mean more trouble for China and Sino-Tibet issue. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, as everyone knows, is very benevolent, not just to Tibetan and to Chinese and to every single human being, is the center of stability in the middle of our political stalemate. And the middle way approach is the way out for China while His Holiness is in our midst. And personally, I believe that since China is someone who plans hundreds of years in advance, it should not be hard for them to see the danger lurking if they keep putting off Tibetan issue, and more so once Tibetan as a race are well established and a highly skilled set of people. But it rests upon the Tibetan people to strive to be that race that China is compelled to take seriously. And in the meantime, Rangzeba or people seeking independence and organizations like Tibetan Youth Congress can keep the fire burning for independence. It is a natural thing to want to stick to our rights, and we might have to switch to it come such a day in a situation. I thank you all for your time, and I do acknowledge that whatever I said might sound choppy and not well thought through, but it is heartfelt, and if it is unsettling and not pleasant, I hope to be forgiven.
On those who are internet singing the no rap the rimba chen those ne gashi ji shugi de shugi is shue tu chena touch the lay